Peace and blessings, YouTube. The Ripper here. Good day to you all. Much love. Peace and blessings to everyone. Thanks for tuning in. I would like to speak about the conscious of righteousness and or wickedness that many of us may fall victim to by overcoming trials and tribulations. A lot of times when God put us through a trial or a tribulation, depending on how we handle that trial or that tribulation, it can come with a guilty conscience or even a conscience of success or overcoming. When you pass the trial, whatever the trial may be, they come in different forms, but whatever trial God puts us through, there's effects after each trial and tribulation. So every time we overcome a trial, we get stronger, mentally, spiritually, more connected. We get more powerful within ourselves, understanding that we have mastered, or we're mastering self and mastering the conditions. But oftentimes, if there are situations where we fail to overcome the trial, there's a guilty conscience. What is this guilty conscience that we fall victim to? If there's a guilt, that means that innately you know it's wrong, or innately you know that you failed somewhere, and that conscience is supposed to also make us stronger in relationship to knowing, okay, this is where I failed, this is where I went wrong. I need to learn from that mistake and overcome that so that I don't fall victim to that mistake again. That is what that guilty conscience is all about. Now, to fail or failure of understanding what the guilt conscience is, or the root of that guilt, will lead to greater anxiety and grief, meaning that you have not learned your lesson from that trial, and the guilty conscience will increase. So this guilt conscience is serious. It is a very serious thing because it is something subconscious. Regardless of the conscious decisions that we make, anytime you feel guilty, that is innate. That means that you knew, or you know that you're doing something that is wrong, but you still consciously made the wrong decision. So that is a very significant thing, because you can consciously make the wrong decision, but subconsciously you know that you did wrong. So that's very significant, because that means that you know right. That means that you know what you're doing is wrong, or that means that you know you have to correct certain error. So what is blocking us from correcting this behavior or certain mentalities that cause us to have this guilty conscience? So that is really that was on my heart. I really want to discuss with us in terms of perfecting and mastering self, mastering our own desires and mentality, because then you don't have a guilt conscience. When you're living in harmony with truth and righteousness and in harmony with the Creator, there is no guilty conscience. The guilt comes from disobedience. The guilt comes from failure of changing your mentality or your behavior. And then that chastisement will increase depending on how you respond. So that is very significant, because that affects everything you attempt to do. It affects the power of the mind. It affects your intelligence. It affects your frequency. It affects your magnetism with other human beings. It affects your growth successfully as well, because you can spiral downward if you continue to fail the trials, because you're showing God that you're not worthy of greater elevation or success or whatever you may desire. There's no human being that don't desire to be successful or to be in higher connection to the Creator, but we take a lot of times the wrong decisions, and taking the wrong steps will affect that pilgrimage toward God. So whether we know it's God or not, every human being wants to get closer to God, whether they understand it or not. Your nature is to get closer to God. We just may not know how to articulate it or understand it, but all of us yearn to be closer with our Creator because of the God who created us. A lot of times we just don't know what it is. Just like that guilt conscience, that's a chastisement. When you have anxiety, that's a chastisement. When you're miserable or depressed, that's a chastisement from something you're doing, a mentality or some behavior pattern that you're following, that God is trying to show you that it's incorrect or improper, and you're not adhering to that chastisement, and it will increase. So this guilty conscience is very, very important, and it also can lead to greater psychological damage as well. It can lead to greater mental health problems as well, because all of this is psychological, all of this is mental, all of this is unseen within the mind. So we need to focus on empowering our minds. Only truth and righteousness can do that, not playing games with truth or just acquiescing to guilt, or acquiescing going along with things because we think it will give us some gain or some benefit. I mean, living wicked, thinking it will get you gain, or just because everybody else is doing it, but you feel the guilt from it, or you feel the anxiety and grief from that behavior, but you're still doing it because you think you have to. That's dangerous, because you're trying to please the world and you're not listening to God communicating through your conscious. Always stay in tune with your conscious, regardless of what's happening on the outside of yourself, with other people or other situations. Always listen to the God of self, that conscious that is communicating with you through your feeling, through that feeling that you may have. And that is conditional as well, because some people may not feel a conscious. Some people may not feel a guilt conscious. Some people are that dead spiritually where they don't even feel that conscious or that guilt from behavior. They're so low in their frequency. Obviously, God is merciful and God will show them how to come up as well. But for those of us who have a conscious on guilt and or pleasure, then we need to find the balance of mastering the guilt conscious, mastering the behavior that is causing us to our frequency to be decreased or lowered. That is very important, and especially in this day and time that we're living in, understanding that guilt conscience is a mercy from God to show you, okay, this is incorrect, this is improper, I need to change this. Before something worse happens, for something catastrophic happens in my life, because it does get worse. So never ignore that conscious, that guilt or that conscious in general. When you feel something is wrong, never ignore it, and let's purify our actions. Let's purify that conscience to the point where we are now elevating internally, connecting greater within ourselves and to our universal God. That is very important, especially in today's time, because the wicked do not have power. There's a hand over the wicked. There's no permanence in wicked rulership. You got to understand that no wicked nation has ever had permanence. It always had a time frame, because wickedness has no permanence in this universe. It will have a time frame, and then after that time, it's over. And any individual who lives with the wicked will die with the wicked. And that's the time we're living in right now. The end of the wicked, the end of the time of the wicked. So we need to start looking at ourselves and making sure that we're not living wicked. Make sure that we're not in that path of destruction of the wicked, and literally make sure we're living righteous and overcoming our weaknesses and low desires. That is extremely important, because the wicked have no permanence. You can't think that wicked rulership is forever. That's why it seems, and it has seemed, so ridiculous and overwhelming to many. The injustice and oppression is because it's not going to be for forever. It only has a time frame, but only the strong will get through that process. Wickedness is a process. This wicked rulership, this government, these policies, oppression, injustice is a process. It's for a certain amount of time, and then after a certain amount of time, it ends, and everything that has subjected itself to that wicked rulership will be erased. And everyone who makes it beyond that, there's a great reward expected for them. Any one of us who make it past out of this time we're living in into the next life or the hereafter, which is after the wicked have been destroyed, the power of the wicked, that's the time we're living in right now. That's why so much is unfolding. All of us who make it beyond this point after the wicked rulership of this government and these wicked rulers, we have a great reward in the near future. So let's continue to make sure that we stay alive. That's the key, because God is going to kill you if you're living wicked. So if you don't survive, then you'll understand that, okay, I was amongst that casualty of war. I was unsuccessful in connecting to God and living righteous, so you'll perish. But those of us who make it, those of us who live beyond these points, there's a great reward for us for living amongst Satan, because we're not justified in being amongst Satan. God wouldn't be justified for allowing us to suffer living amongst Satan and wicked rulership and not guaranteeing us or granting us a reward, because we did not ask to be born in wickedness. We did not ask to be born disadvantaged or lied to or miseducated. So it would be unjust for God not to grant us a reward for making it out of this. So this is to encourage us to stay the course, stay uplifted, stay strong-minded, because there is a reward for the righteous that make it out of this. So stay strong, stay uplifted. Peace and blessings.